Hello, all my YouTubers, all my people out there in the chat room, and all my lurkers, and all my Memorex viewers that'll be watching it later on. Glad to have you with me today. Gee whiz, it's a pretty day outside. Little breeze blowing, mid-70s. Little cool when I got up this morning, though, and went to let the dogs out. I almost needed to put on a sweater. Here it is, second day of September 2016. Glad to be able to bring you the news today. There's a lot of it. Lord have mercy. And I've got more news than I can even shake a stick at today. So I'm just going to bring you a mixed bag of fruit. We're just going to check all this stuff out and see what what we've got. It was hard kind of trying to pick through all this stuff today to bring to you. But we'll just start anywhere. Let's see. The first one is off the Business Insider. Shipping giants bankruptcy could have terrifying ripple effects on the economy. This is out of Los Angeles off the AP, and it says the bankruptcy of Hanjin Shipping Line has thrown ports and retailers around the world into confusion, with giant container ships marooned and merchants worrying whether will reach their shelves. The South Korean giant filed for bankruptcy protection on Wednesday and stopped accepting new cargo. With its assets being froze, ships from China to Canada found themselves refused permission to offload or take aboard containers because there were no guarantees that tugboat pilots or stevedores would be paid. Hanjin called us and said, we're going bankrupt and we can't pay any bills, so don't bother asking, said J. Kip Lutet, executive director of the Marine Exchange of Southern California, which provides traffic control for ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, the nation's busiest port complex. 3 Hanjin container ships ranging from about 700 feet to 1,100 feet long were either drifting offshore or anchored away from terminals on Thursday. A 4th vessel that was supposed to leave Long Beach on Thursday morning remained anchored inside the breakwater. The company said Friday that one ship in Singapore had been seized by the ship's owner. Hanjin Shipping spokesman Park Min did not confirm any other seizures. As of Friday, 27 ships have been refused entry to ports or terminals, she said. That left cargo headed to and from Asia in limbo, much to the distress of merchants looking to stock shelves with fall fashions or Christmas toys. Someone from the garment industry called earlier today asking, how long is this going to go on, because I've got clothing out there. The Korean International Trade Association said about 10 Hanjin vessels in China were seized or likely to be seized by charters or other parties. Kim Ba-jung-hoon, a director at the KITA, said the association had confirmed about 10 Hanjin vessels also had been turned away from Chinese ports or were waiting offshore. South Korea's maritime ministry said in a statement that Hanjin's trouble would affect cargo exports for 2 to 3 months, given that August through October is a high demand season for deep sea routes. It said 540,000 TEU of cargo already loaded on Hanjin vessels would face delays. Hanjin, the world's 7th largest container shipper, represents nearly 8% of the trans-Pacific trade volume for the U.S. market. The National Retail Federation, the world's largest association, wrote to U.S. Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker and Federal Maritime Commission Chairman Mario on Thursday, urging them to work with South Korean government, ports, and other previous disruptions, or to prevent disruptions. The bankruptcy is having a ripple effect throughout the global supply chain that could cause significant harm to both consumers and U.S. economy, the association wrote. Retailers' main concern is that there are millions of dollars worth of merchandise that needs to be on store shelves that could be impacted by this, said Jonathan Gold, the group's vice president for supply chain and customs policy. Some of it still sitting in Asia waiting to be loaded on ships. Some is already aboard ships out on the ocean, and some is sitting in U.S. docks waiting to be picked up. It's understandable that port terminal operators, railroads, trucking companies, and others don't want to if they're concerned they won't get paid. The confusion might sink some trucking firms that contract with Hanjin to deliver cargo containers carrying everything from electronics to car parts from ports to company loading bays. They've got to pay bills. They could literally close their doors over this, said Peter Schneider, Fresno-based vice president of TGS Transportation Incorporated. Hanjin has been losing money for years. It filed for bankruptcy protection a day after its creditors, led by state-run bank, refused to prop it up. Lines may take on some of Hanjin's traffic, but at a price. Since vessels already are operating at high capacity, shippers may wind up paying a premium to squeeze their cargo containers on board, said Jack O'Connell, international trade advisor to Los Angeles-based Beacon Economics. Shipping a 40-foot container from China to the U.S. jumped up to 50% in a single day, said Neeraj Poskus, director of pricing and procurement at Flexport, a licensed freight forwarder and customs broker based in San Francisco. The price from China to West Coast ports rose from $1,100 per container to as much as $1,700 on Thursday, while the cost from China to the East Coast jumped from $1,700 to $2,400, he said. Hanjin's bankruptcy was a major factor, he said, although rates were affected by the upcoming Chinese National Day holiday, which and by shipping lines sidelining vessels to reduce overcapacity. Global demand and trade have suffered since the 2008 recession, while steamship lines continue to build more and larger vessels and meant ships that were conceived as cost-effective when freight costs were higher several years ago. But weaker trade and overcapacity have sent ocean shipping rates plunging in recent years. Poskus said prices hit historic lows globally, down to as much as $600 per container from Shanghai to Los Angeles, and cover fuel costs for larger ships, he said. Poskus expects the current spike in prices to last only a month or two, with about 5% of ships in the global trading fleet sitting idle. There's plenty of room to take over Hanjin's capacity, and are discussing the possibility of adding ships, he said. However, prices will have to rise somewhat in order to be sustainable, he said, perhaps to about $1,000 per container. So there you have that information. And that's rather alarming. There's a lot of jobs going to be lost over that. A lot of people that can't afford to lose jobs and will lose jobs, and prices going up in the stores because of it. It's going to be what ripple effect this has on the economy. I think it'll be a major one. Next one that we have for you is off the businessinsider.com. To come up here, this is a recall that happened. Samsung's nightmare scenario is happening, and it couldn't occur at a worse time. Well, I don't know, is it so much as a recall is something that you need to pay very close attention to. South Korean electronics giant was forced to suspend sales of its new flagship smartphone, the Galaxy Note 7, on Friday because dozens of the handsets have exploded. It's been extremely well reviewed, is now also being recalled worldwide in a move that is likely to cost Samsung hundreds of millions of dollars. As the colossal disaster comes on the eve of the launch of the new iPhone from Samsung's arch rival Apple. It's hard to overstate the size of this screw up. Samsung had an open goal, so it kicked itself in the face. Has recently been after years of wobbly sales and falling profits. The company was supposed to be into a winner with the Note 7 and has been on track for the first mobile in 3 years. Critics raved about the large screen smartphone, and since its August 19th launch, about 2.5 million phones have been sold. Was coasting to victory on the back of its predecessor models, the Galaxy S6 and S6 Edge from last year, which got Samsung's revenue growing again after years of decline. What's more, expectations for Apple's next iPhone, scheduled to launch later this month, are tepid. The device is expected to be only an incremental upgrade on its predecessor, the iPhone 6S. More radical overhaul is expected next year for both 10th anniversary of the launch of the iPhone. As such, the Note 7 stage to itself. It had momentum. It was in with very real shot at being the phone of 2016, but it has exploded instead. In a statement to the press on Friday, Samsung said there had been 35 cases worldwide in which Galaxy Note 7 batteries had exploded. We are currently conducting a thorough inspection with our suppliers to identify possible affected batteries in the market, the company said. It is taking a step of halting the sale of the Note 7. For millions of devices already sold, a recall is in effect. The company said for customers who already have Galaxy Note 7 devices, we will voluntarily replace their current device with a new one over the coming weeks. We acknowledge the inconvenience this may cause in the market, but this is to ensure that Samsung continues to deliver the highest quality products to our customers. We're working closely with our partners to ensure the replacement experience is and efficient as possible. The fallout will be immense. This is devastating for Samsung, both financially and reputationally. Back of the envelope calculations about component parts are unreliable, but it's fair to say that replacing 2.5 million devices will cost Samsung in the short term hundreds of millions of dollars. It will also do brutal damage to Samsung's reputation for quality. Reports of exploding batteries gave Samsung's stock a battering on Thursday, wiping a $7 billion off the company's market value. Now that the recall has been confirmed, the company's value will most likely plunge further. Samsung's devices had a reputation for being subpar. Its phones were often made of plastic when top-line rivals used metal and glass. In the past 2 years, however, Samsung turned that around with a series of gorgeous all-metal models. The Note 7 was, by all accounts, the best yet. There are a few small positives to be drawn from this mess. Relatively few Note 7 devices have actually been sold. Annual sales tend to run toward 50 million units or more, and most of the damage is in Asia and not in the West. To have jumped out in front of the problem, recalling everything immediately rather than going into denial or engaging in clumsy cover-up. In the long run, that may burnish Samsung's reputation for trustworthiness, but right now the deck is burning. Here's the full statement from Samsung. Committed to producing the highest quality products, we take every incident report from our valued customers very seriously. In response to recent reported cases of the new Galaxy Note 7, we conducted a thorough investigation and found battery cell issue. September 1st, there have been 35 cases that have been reported globally, and we are currently conducting a thorough inspection with our suppliers to identify possible affected batteries in the market. However, because our customer safety is an absolute priority at Samsung, we have stopped sales of the Galaxy Note 7. For customers who already have the Galaxy Note 7 devices, we will voluntarily replace their current device with a new one over the coming weeks. We acknowledge the inconvenience this may cause in the market, but it's to ensure Samsung continues to deliver the highest quality products to our customers. We are working closely with our partners to ensure the replacement experience is as convenient and efficient as possible. Then there are ways to clear up storage space on your iPhone that you can click on here in this article to see how you can maybe sidestep some of the issues with it, I guess, until you can get it back to them if you have one. So you can check that out. All of these URLs that I'm reporting to you are in the description of the video for your perusal. So you can check this stuff out for yourself. The next one that I have for you is off the Business Insider. EU's big plan to tighten gun control has hit a major roadblock. This is from Zurich off Rutgers, and it says friction between Switzerland and the European Union over bloc's plans to tighten gun control following a rise in militant attacks could turn into another serious snag in ties already tested by Swiss efforts to curb immigration. The proposed directive, which applies to non-EU members, Switzerland only because it Europe's Schengen open border system, has raised hackles among the Swiss who resent intervention from Brussels. Christoph Blocher, a leading voice in the Swiss right, has a Eurosceptic. I'm sorry, let me try that again. Chris Blocher, a leading voice of the Swiss right and a Eurosceptic, says Switzerland should consider abandoning Europe's Schengen system of passport-free travel if the Swiss people rejected the proposed measure in a referendum. Militants killed scores in attacks in Paris last year. The EU plans on gun control aim to curb online weapon sales and impose more restrictions on assault weapons. But the initial proposal provoked an outcry in Switzerland because it meant a ban on the long Swiss tradition of ex-soldiers keeping their assault rifles. Then, 2 months ago, Justice Minister Simonetta Sommaruga returned from meetings in Brussels saying she had successfully negotiated against such a ban, but the fine print was more complicated. EU members demanded concessions, including psychological tests and club membership. Swiss gun rights proponents are now complaining that this could disarm thousands of law-abiding citizens and that it would encroach on Switzerland's heritage and national identity that includes a well-armed citizenry. When conflicts arise, Switzerland must put its sovereignty first, said Blocher, a businessman and vice president of SVP, which is the country's biggest party. In an emergency, Switzerland should be ready to exit Schengen. Switzerland has one of the highest rates of private gun ownership in Europe, with nearly 48% of households owning a gun. In France, there are about 30 weapons per 100 people, while the figure in Great Britain is far lower at 6.7 guns per 100 civilians, according to the Australian-based think tank gunpolicy.org. However, Swiss gun-related crime is low, and the high number of privately owned guns harks back to a long tradition of self-defense and to the Swiss policy of near universal conscription. 11% of the 20,600 soldiers who left the Swiss army opted to keep their assault rifles, which upon departure and modified to fire single shot. The number of soldiers choosing to keep their weapons has been declining for several years. Switzerland's grassroots gun lobby, Protel, named after the 14th century folk hero William Tell, said it will take the matters to voters if the European gun restrictions result in stricter ownership standards on Swiss soil. Under Switzerland's system of direct democracy, groups like Protel can gather signatures and put such matters before voters. With our direct democracy, Swiss people are accustomed to having the last word, said Protel's Dominic Reiner. They're opposed to any and all efforts to make current weapon laws more restrictive. The gun control issue comes as Switzerland's EU ties are strained on multiple fronts. The two sides are negotiating curbs after Swiss voters in 2014 backed quotas on European workers. A failure to agree could mean a collapse of bilateral accords with Swiss' main trading partner. Outlines of any deal, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker visits on September the 19th, but the clock is ticking. Switzerland has said it may enact unilateral curbs by February 2017. Europe plans to finalize its gun directives later this year. So there you have the information on what they're trying to do about gun control over in Switzerland. The next one that we have here is off of RT.com, and it says 99% effective. Wall fails to seal off crippled nuclear plant. They can't seem to get that thing under control over there at all. It says an almost watertight ice wall built around the Fukushima nuclear plant in a bid to prevent groundwater from entering the site has quite predictably proven to be not good enough, with Japan's nuclear watchdog now urging TEPCO to find a better solution. An expert panel with the Japanese Nuclear Regulation Authority examined the latest TEPCO report this week to assess how far and how successfully the project had been implemented. Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun reports. The members of the Red Panel concluded that the ice wall was not working and a new plan was necessary to prevent groundwater getting mixed up with radioactive substances. The plan to block groundwater with frozen wall of earth is failing, said Yokishori Kitsutaka, panel member and professor of engineering at Tokyo Metropolitan University. They need to come up with another solution, even if they keep going forward with the plan. In March, construction company Chemija Corp began building the frozen wall of earth around the 4 reactors and has completed most of the 1.5 kilometer, which translates to 1 mile, barrier. TEPCO hoped that the frozen earth barrier would thwart most of the groundwater from reaching the plant and divert it to the ocean instead. However, little or no success was recorded in the wall's ability to block the groundwater during the 5-month period. The amount of groundwater reaching the plant was not changed after the wall was built, experts said. The problem is said to lie in the wall's gaps or parts where the barrier is not frozen. According to TEPCO, 99% of their thermometer readings showed that the wall's temperatures are at or below the freezing point, meaning the wall is mostly solid. However, the remaining 1% of the readings showed the temperatures above the freezing point, which means the wall is not solid at those parts. Those constitute a mere 1% of the 820-meter-long barrier, but where Earth is not frozen are enough to ruin the entire project, as they were found in areas with high levels of groundwater concentration. TEPCO, however, believes that the unfrozen sections can be fixed if coated with concrete. In April, a chief architect of the project said the gaps in the wall and rainfall will still allow for water to creep into the facility and reach the damaged nuclear reactors, which will in turn create as much as 50 tons of contaminated water each day. It's not zero. Yuichi Okamura, a general manager at Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, said, referring to the amount of groundwater flowing into the plant. Like a cat and mouse game, we have come up against many unexpected problems. TEPCO has been repeatedly facing criticism for handling of the Fukushima crisis, which occurred after a massive earthquake and subsequent tsunami led to a meltdown of reactors at the facility in March of 2011. The company has admitted that it did not act properly during the disaster, confessing in February that it announced the nuclear meltdowns far too late. It also stated in 2012 report that it downplayed safety risks because incident out of fear that additional measures would lead to a shutdown of the plant and further fuel public anxiety and anti-nuclear campaigns. Despite the ongoing problem encountered following the meltdowns, TEPCO has set 2020 as the goal for ending the plant's water problem, an aim which critics say is far too optimistic. The problem of water contamination is just one of many surrounding the dismantling and contaminating of Fukushima plant debris, which is estimated to take at least 40 years. There you have that information, man, oh man. And how much devastation is that going to cause to our water and our marine life over the course of 40 years? And it's not the only plant that's leaking. I mean, we have plants over here that's leaking too. The next one that I have for you, pop up here. Web's taking its sweet time this morning. Here we go. This is off of the Washington Post. It says, like it's been nuked. Millions of bees dead after South Carolina sprays for Zika mosquitoes. Like we didn't see that coming. And if we can get it to scroll down here a little bit. Mercy, mercy, mercy. Taking its time. Well, while it's taking its time, I'll talk a few minutes. I put up a video over on my channel last night that you all might enjoy if you haven't seen it yet. It's about something that I did 26 years ago, me and a whole lot of other people, and it ended me up on the 11 o'clock news. So if you, if you want to see how I ended up on the 11 o'clock news, you can check that out. So from now on, you'll know that when I say film at 11, I may not be kidding you. All right, we'll get back to this article here. It's finally decided to roll up on my screen. This is about them spraying for the skeeters down there in South Carolina, trying to kill the Zika skeeters, and they're killing the bees. It says on Sunday morning in South Carolina, honeybees began to die in massive numbers. Death came suddenly to Dorchester County, South Carolina. Stressed insects tried to flee their nests only to surrender in little clumps at hive entrances. The dead worker bees littering the farms suggested that colony collapse disorder was not the culprit. In that odd phenomena, workers vanished as though raptured, leaving a living queen and young bees behind. Instead, the dead heaps signaled the killer was less mysterious, but no less devastating. The pattern matched acute pesticide poisoning. By one estimate, at single apiary, Flowerton Bee Farm and Supply in Somerville, 46 hives died on the spot, totaling about 2.5 million bees. One Somerville woman wrote on Facebook was like visiting a cemetery, pure sadness. Scientists collected soil samples from Flowerton on Tuesday, according to WCBD TV, to further investigate the cause of death. But to bee farmers, the reason is already clear. The bees had been poisoned by Dorchester's own insecticides efforts, casualties in the war on disease-carrying mosquitoes. On Sunday morning, parts of Dorchester County were sprayed with a common insecticide that kills mosquitoes on contact. The United States began using NAILD in 1959, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, which notes that the chemicals dissipate so quickly that it's not a hazard to people. That said, human exposure to NAILD during spraying should not occur. In parts of South Carolina, trucks trailing pesticide clouds are not an unusual sight, thanks to a mosquito-controlled program that also includes destroying larvae. Given the current concerns of West Nile virus and Zika, there are several dozen cases of travel-related Zika in South Carolina, though the state health department reports no one has yet acquired the disease from local mosquito bite. Dorchester decided trying something different on Sunday. It marked a departure from Dorchester County's usual ground-based efforts. For the first time, an airplane dispensed NAILD in a fine mist, raining insect death from above between 6:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. on Sunday. The county says it provided plenty of warnings, spreading word about the pesticide plane by a newspaper announcement Friday and Facebook post on Saturday. Local beekeepers felt differently. Had I known, I would have been camping on steps, doing whatever I had to do, screaming, "You can't do this," beekeeper Juanita Stanley said in an interview with Clarkston WCSC-TV. Stanley told the Charleston Post that the bees are her income, but she's more devastated at the loss of the bees than her honey. The county acknowledged the bee deaths Tuesday. Dorchester County is aware that some beekeepers in the area that was sprayed on Sunday had lost their beehives. Jason Ward, county administrator, said in a news release. He added, according to the Charleston Post and Courier, "I'm not pleased that so many bees were killed." Sprayed NAILD from the air is not unprecedented, particularly when covering areas that cannot be reached by truck. In a single year in Florida, more than 6 million acres were fumigated with chemical, according to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The agency argued in January that the technique should be used to curb Zika in Puerto Rico. But the insect neurotoxin cannot discriminate between bees and bloodsuckers. A profile of the chemical in Cornell University pesticide database warned that nailed is highly toxic to bees. Although the insecticide was known to kill bees, to South Carolina beekeepers, spraying had not been as significant parasites, disease, and other hive threats. At South Carolina Beekeepers Association, President Larry Hay told the Post and Courier in June of 2015, many counties will spray at night when honeybees do not forage for pollen. Plus, given significant warning, beekeepers will shield their hives and protect the bees, food, and water from contamination. Sunday was different. Somerville resident Andrew Mack, who keeps bees as a hobby, wrote on Facebook that the hot weather left bees partially or particularly exposed. Once temperatures exceed 90 degrees, bees may exit the nest to cool down in what is called a beard, clustering on the outside of the hive in a ball. Neither Mack nor Stanley had covered their hives, and then came the plane. They passed right over the trees 3 times, Stanley said to ABC4 News. Plane left, a familiar buzzing stopped. The silence in its wake was like a morgue. As for the dead bees, as Stanley told the AP, her farm looks like it's been nuked. And started change.org petition calling for Dorchester County to halt aerial nailed spraying. It's unclear whether those who lost bees are pursuing other recourse. There's pictures in this of them fogging the area. So sad. There's an update on this. It says Dorchester County Administrator Jason Ward wrote to the Washington Post in a statement on Thursday clarifying that the county sent out a press release at 9:15 a.m. on Friday, August 26th. The beekeepers that were on the county's contact list that were in the zone to be sprayed were called with one exception. Mr. Scott Gaskins, who runs the mosquito control program, failed to call Mitch Yawn, Miss Juanita Stanley's business partner, Ward said in an email. The second issue regarding beekeepers like Mr. Andrew Mack revolves around the fact that the county did not have those locations on its list. However, we have reached out to the Low County Beekeepers Association, and they provide locations of other beekeepers in Dorchester County. So there you have that information. That is so sad. And without the bees, we cease to exist. I mean, I hope everybody's wrapping their brain cells around this. You know, we have to have the bees in order to survive. They pollinate our food supply. The next one that I have for you, .com, and it says Aurora Massacre survivors sued. How did 4 end up owing the theater $700,000? This is fascinating, and it tells you a lot about the court system. It says Denver. They had survived brain damage, paralysis, and deaths of their children for 4 years. They met in secret group. Now they were finally prepared to settle with the Aurora movie theater that became the site of one of the deadliest massacres in U.S. history. Marcus Weaver kept a calm facade, but wreathed with anxiety within. His dreams often returned to him to the theater, to the sounds of gunshots and the feeling of his friend's lifeless body slumped against him. After he escaped, he found a bullet hole in his shoulder. On a conference call, the federal judge overseeing the case told the plaintiff's attorney that he was prepared to rule in the theater chain's favor. He urged the plaintiffs to settle with Cinemark, owner of Century Aurora 16 Multiplex, where the July 20th, 2012 shooting occurred. They had 24 hours. But before that deadline, the settlement would collapse, and 4 survivors of the massacre would be ordered to pay the theater chain more than $700,000. I'm trying to get her to scroll down a little bit here. The Los Angeles Times corroborated this account with 4 parties who were present at the settlement conference but declined to be identified because the negotiations were private. It's not wanting to move. Gee whiz. Okay, a separate set of survivors had just suffered a devastating defeat in state court where a jury of 6 decided that Cinemark could not events of that night when James Holmes killed 12 people and injured 70 others in a 10-minute screening of The Dark Knight Rises. The survivors, some of whom had 2 or 3 attorneys with them, were told that the state case had decided the issue. Cinemark was not liable for the shootings, and the U.S. District Judge R. Brooke Jackson, who oversaw the federal case, was not about to issue an order saying as much. Or excuse me, was about to issue an order saying as much. The federal lawsuit was effectively over. But Jackson wanted the survivors and Cinemark to end the case with a settlement. It was 8 a.m., June the 23rd. For the next 8 hours, attorneys for both sides inched closer to a deal. At 4 p.m., Cinemark's attorneys presented a settlement offer. Before it was read, a federal magistrate cornered Weaver to speak with him one-on-one. He asked Weaver to remember the slow pace of change in the civil rights movement and told him that changing theater safety, it was the biggest smack in the face, Weaver said. He was basically telling us, you're right, they're basically at fault, but there's justice, and then there's true justice. It wasn't a good deal. Weaver thought $150,000 split among 41 plaintiffs. Weaver leaned in close to his attorney. He says, is that it? That's it, Phil Hardman replied. But the settlement would achieve one thing Weaver had been pushing for, acknowledgement that the theater chain would take new measures to protect patrons. Still, something was worrying him. It was the 12th hour. We were all feeling the same way. We all knew that they were liable. We knew that they were at fault, Weaver said. The settlement face, but I said, let's go for it because it's better than nothing. The deal came with an implied threat. If the survivors reject the deal, moved forward with their case and lost under Colorado law, they would be responsible for the astronomical court fees accumulated by Cinemark. For the survivors was clear, Weaver said. Either seek justice and go into debt or take that pitiful offering of money and the improved public safety, Weaver said. The plaintiff and their attorney all seemed to agree. They decided to split on a split of $30,000 to each of the 3 most critical injured survivors. The remaining 38 plaintiffs would equally share the $60,000. Attorneys with Cinemark drafted a new release to distribute the next day. One plaintiff rejected the deal. The plaintiff, who had been gravely wounded in the shooting, wanted more money than the proposed share of the settlement. The Times is not naming the plaintiff because the plaintiff could not be reached for comment. Weaver's vision briefly blurred. He spent negotiating the deal, the weeks of failed state court trial, the 4 years of anger in the theater since 4 years of anger at the theater since the shooting. All of it was for nothing. It was done then, Weaver said. He removed himself as plaintiff immediately. So did 36 other people. 4 plaintiffs remained on the case the next day, June 24th, when Jackson handed down the order that Cinemark was not liable for the damages. The court cost in the state was $699,000. The cost in the federal case expected to be far more. A blind guy in a dark alley could have seen the state verdict coming, Hardman, Weaver's attorney said. Several plaintiffs and attorneys, including those who would not comment on the settlement negotiations, expressed frustration with the way the state case was handled. In that case, a New York attorney representing 27 people paid one expert $22,000 to testify. Cinemark paid 5 experts $500,000 to testify. Most damaging to their case, the state plaintiffs were not permitted to enter a crucial piece of evidence before the jury. A May 2012 warning from the Department of Homeland Security to the theater chains nationwide concerning the potential for mass casualty attack on a theater. I strongly think that this guy was trying to make a name for himself, and he wanted to just get ahead of the curve, Weaver said. You got this guy from New York representing people in Colorado who were probably misguided, to be honest. The case put forward in the state court was so weak, the federal plaintiffs felt that a rumor circulating among them that the case was set up by Cinemark designed to fail. That's ridiculous, said Mark Byrne, the attorney who argued the state case and is known for representing rescue workers from the September 11 attacks. We had all the resources possible. The only expert we needed was a security expert. In August 2015, Holmes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, avoiding the death penalty. Weaver, 45, has married and had a child since the shooting, a blue-eyed girl named Maggie. He still goes to therapy, which he said has helped him. The way the case ended, however, will never leave him. Theaters aren't any safer, Weaver said. It's almost like everything was for naught. So there you have that article on how you can get totally screwed over by the court system. Next one is off of BizPac Review. It says, Trump makes crystal clear in historic immigration speech, well-being of Americans must come first. Wednesday was a big day for Trump. First high-risk, high-reward gambit to Mexico, highlighted by his cordial visit with Mexican President Enrique Pino Nieto, went off exactly as intended, making Trump look pragmatic, respectful, and most of all, presidential. Arizona policy speech on immigration eschewed amnesty of any sort and laid out a clear, comprehensive 10-point vision to take our country back. Trump began his speech by referring to his earlier visit and calling President Nieto a man I like and respect very much and a man who truly loves his country. Both men agree on ending the illegal flow of drugs, cash, guns, and people across our border and to put the cartels out of business. The Republican nominee also spoke of the contributions of Mexican-American citizens, his love for the people of Mexico, and the friendship between the United States and its neighbor to the south. We're all going to win, Trump said, in calling for new, fair relationships between the two countries. Focusing on current immigration system that doesn't serve the American people, Trump defined immigration reform as improvements in our laws and policies to make life better for American citizens, naming several people who would be alive today were it not for our open border policies supported by President Obama and Hillary Clinton, and that cost our country more than $113 billion a year. Trump insisted on our right as a sovereign nation to choose immigrants that we think will thrive, flourish, and love us. Many good people are illegal immigrants, Trump acknowledged, but that doesn't change the fact that most illegal immigrants are low-skilled with less education that compete with vulnerable Americans. There is only one core issue in the immigration debate, Trump said, and that issue will be well-being of the American people. We will treat everyone living or residing in our country with great dignity. We will be fair, just, and compassionate to all, but our greatest compassion must be for our American citizens. President Obama and Hillary Clinton have engaged in gross dereliction of duty by surrendering the safety of American people to open borders, Trump said to loud applause. This includes bring in $620,000, or I'm sorry, to bring in 620,000 new refugees from Syria, that region, over a short period of time. What is wrong with our politicians? What the hell are we doing? The billionaire businessman outlined a 10-point plan crafted with input from federal immigration officers as well as others who represent workers instead of big business who profit from illegal immigration. Number one, wait for it, Trump said to a palatable anticipation. Build a great wall along the southern border, and there was cheers. And Mexico will pay for the wall, 100% louder cheers. They don't know it yet, but they're going to pay for the wall, Trump said, perhaps referring to the Mexican president's comments by mentioning that he believes Mexico will work with us and that the president wants to solve the problem. End, catch, and release. Anyone caught illegally will be detained until they are removed great distances. Number 3, zero tolerance for the at least 2 million criminal aliens inside the country. We will begin by moving them out day one. Trump called for the passage of Kate's Law to ensure that criminal aliens convicted of illegal reentry receive the strong mandatory minimum sentences, and then we get them out, as well as the Davis-Oliver bill to ensure criminal immigrants and terrorists are swiftly identified and removed. Triple the number of ICE deportation officers by hiring 5,000 of them and putting them on border, not behind desk. Perhaps his funniest lines of the night, the Republican nominee called for a deportation task force to focus on criminal illegals who have evaded justice, just like Hillary Clinton has evaded justice. Okay, maybe they'll be able to deport her, he said. Number 4, blocking funding for sanctuary cities. We will end the sanctuary cities that have resulted in so many needless deaths. Number 5, cancel unconstitutional executive orders and enforce laws. We will immediately terminate President Obama's 2 illegal executive amnesties in which he defied federal law and the Constitution to give amnesty to approximately 5 million illegal immigrants. Anyone who enters the United States illegally is subject to deportation, Trump said. These include criminals, gang members, visa overstays, and welfare recipients. Number 6, stop immigration from Syria, Libya, and other high-risk places. We are going to suspend the issuance of visas from any place where adequate screening cannot occur. Trump called it an extreme vetting and wondered why we shouldn't create safe zones over there with money from Gulf states instead of bringing Syrians here at a tremendous cost and risk to Americans. In a fundamental shift from our previous immigration policies, Trump called for the ideological certification to make sure that those we are admitting to our country share our values and love our people. This would exclude people who believe in honor killings, radical Islam, disrespecting gays and minorities, etc. Number 7, make countries take people back when we order them deported. Trump mentioned the 13,000 criminals released under Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State, 30% of whom committed new offenses. Number 8, complete biometric entry exit visa tracking system. Eliminate visa overstays that are a threat to national security. Number 9, Trump called for an enforcement of E-Verify and turning off the welfare spigot. Instead, and insisted that those who abuse our welfare system be priorities for immediate removal. This is groundbreaking as well. For the first time in at least a generation, an American politician called for legal immigration to serve as the best interest of the American worker. Trump mentioned the 59 million who have come between 1965 and 2015, many of whom have greatly enriched our country. But now we have an obligation to them, to their children, to control immigration. We must ensure assimilation, integration, and upward mobility. Immigration levels measured by population share within historical norms, selecting immigrants by likelihood of success and their ability to be financially self-sufficient. According to Trump, immigrants who come here must do so legally, proper matter that serves the national interest. Trump said these 10 steps will accomplish more in a matter of months than our politicians have accomplished on this issue in the last 50 years. What of those already here illegally? Those who have broken no laws, that aren't on welfare, are productive members of society. Trump outlined one route and one route only: to return home and apply for re-entry just like everyone else under the rules of the new immigration system I have outlined above. We will break the cycle of amnesty for illegal immigration. There will be no amnesty. The world will be this: you cannot obtain legal status or become a citizen of the United States by illegally entering our country. There seems to be some wiggle room at the end, as Trump did not call for any active pursuit of law-abiding, productive illegals currently residing here, instead saying that discussion can only take place only in an atmosphere in which is in the past. If Trump accomplishes these 10 things and we have our country back, my guess is that vast majority of Americans will be more than happy to reach some sort of compromise with those folks. The speech ended with a touching parade of parents who have lost loved ones to illegal immigrants, all of whom endorsed the Republican nominee. It is clear from the speech and from the reality on the ground that Americans have one last chance to get this one right. After that, it's game over. The good news is Trump's best day yet on the campaign trail comes at a time when he is beginning to gain serious ground at the polls. I have the information on his Arizona speech. The next one that we have here is off of the new atlas.com. And I found this, I don't know, a little disturbing. I mean, I am apprehensive with the technology because some of it's good and some of it maybe not so good. You'll have to be the judge. I'll just tell you what this is about. It says IBM's Watson supercomputer creates a movie trailer. It says what happened when an artificial intelligence system is tasked with making a trailer to a horror movie about an artificially enhanced human hybrid. We now have the answer. Morgan, a new suspense horror film from debut director Luke Scott, son of Ridley Scott, from all reports, plays like a mix between last year's impressive Ex Machina and modern-day riff on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Considering the film is about a human hybrid packed with nanotechnology, 20th Century Fox decided to approach IBM's research and see if its Watson supercomputer could come up with a machine-generated trailer. Recently, we saw the Impossible Things project attempt to deliver an AI that could write a horror movie, but the results weren't great, and the initial trailer came across as a cliched compendium of stereotypes. In this instance, the IBM researchers took a more comprehensive approach, training Watson by breaking down 100 horror movie trailers into separate scenes and then having the system analyze each sequence through 3 different prisms. Completed a visual analysis of each trailer moment and assigned individual scenes with a variety of moods and labels. Then the audio of each scene was studied again to gauge a mood and sentiment of the given moment. Finally, Watson deconstructed the composition of each scene in order to develop a sense of the location and specific shots, such as lighting and framing, generally utilized in successful horror film trailers. Once Watson was acquainted with the general strategies involved in compiling a horror trailer, the researchers let it watch the full-length feature from beginning to end, resulting in it selecting 10 key moments that the ideal trailer should consist of. From this point, a human editor came on board, final cut from the 6 minutes of footage selected. The final result is reasonably interesting, although it's most certainly not as dynamic as regular human-created trailer, and I could happily live the rest of my life without hearing another creepy nursery rhyme sung by a child. The most refreshing aspect of Watson's trailer is how little plot it gives away. Over recent years, a common criticism lobbed at modern trailers is that they reveal way too much of the film, so it's a magnificently welcome shift to see mainstream Hollywood trailer that is more concerned with mood and atmosphere than simple retelling of the plot. Another point of interest for the researchers was how Watson chose to focus on moments in the film that were never considered by human creators for earlier trailers. This allowed the filmmakers an entirely novel perspective on their film and a chance to highlight scenes that may not have made it into more traditional film trailer. As a contrast to Watson's trailer for posted above, see below for more conventional human-made trailer. And they have these trailers in this if you want to watch them. Not into horror films, but I think I may be even less into trailers being well, a computer generated. There's more to this article if you want to read up on it, but I just found it a little bit alarming. I don't know that I like a computer being able to read human emotion and uh, try to deal with people on a human level. That just does not sit well with me. The next one we have is off of BizPac Review, and it says Obama will bypass Congress and join UN climate treaty, sources say. And this says U.S. and China will formally join the United Nations Global Warming Agreement while President Barack Obama makes his final trip to Asia for the G20 meeting in September, sources tell the South China Morning Post. U.S. and Chinese officials said the announcement will be likely September 2nd, about 2 days before Obama meets with President Xi Jinping at a G20 summit in Hangzhou. Sources told the Post. If true, Obama will have ratified major international agreement without Senate approval. Obama clearly hopes U.S. and Chinese ratification of the deal will help it come into force earlier than anticipated, making it politically harder for a future president to undo. There are still some uncertainties from the U.S. side due to the complicated U.S. system in ratifying such a treaty, but the announcement is still quite likely to be ready by September 2nd, a source with the announcement told Post. White House, however, has refused to call the UN deal a treaty in order to bypass hostile Congress. Other countries have ratified the agreement, have had to get legislative approval to join. Lo and behold, the President of the United States can ratify a treaty in the same way as China's maximum leader, Myra Nabel, Director of Global Warming and International Environmental Policy at the Free Market Competitive Enterprise Institute, wrote in a recent blog post on the Post report. He merely has to say the magic word, so be it, Nabel wrote, and it is so. Who knew that President Barack Obama has become our maximum leader? I say our dear maximum leader. Republicans have also challenged Obama's ability to join the UN deal without Senate approval. Republican leadership has vowed to block Senate efforts to ratify the deal, which is why Obama wanted to avoid Congress in the first place. Republican presidential nominee come out against the deal and said he would renegotiate it. I will be looking at that very, very seriously at a minimum. I will be negotiating those agreements at a minimum. And at maximum, I may do something else, Trump told Rutgers in May. But those agreements are one-sided agreements, and they are bad for the United States, Trump said. Not a big fan because other countries don't adhere to it, and China doesn't adhere to it, and China's spewing it into the atmosphere. Of the U.S. Constitution says the president shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. Obama pledged to cut U.S. greenhouse gas emissions 26 to 28% by 2025. He also he made the pledge to get China to sign onto the agreement and to show the U.S. was serious about tackling global warming. A more ambivalent promise of peaking emissions by 2030 and has already said it would use more coal in the coming years to meet projected energy demand. Nearly 200 countries signed onto the UN treaty in April, but so far not enough member states with high emissions have ratified the agreement for it to go into force this year. But even with Senate approval, it's not even clear the U.S. can meet Obama's climate goals. Chip Kappenberger, a climate scientist at the Free Market Cato Institute, noted in April, it appears highly unlikely that U.S. energy policies will actually come close to meeting his emission targets under the time frame that he has promised. I have information on him going above Senate and Congress to do what he wants to do. Here's off a big story or bigstory.ap.org. Syrian reaches the U.S. this week in resettlement program. down a little bit. There we go. This is from Jordan, and it says the U.S. will reach its target this week of taking in 10,000 Syrian war refugees in a year-old resettlement program. The U.S. ambassador to Jordan said Sunday after meeting families headed to California and Virginia. The resettlement program has emerged as an issue in the U.S. presidential campaign, with Republican nominee Donald Trump place Syrians pose a potential security threat. U.S. ambassador to Jordan said Sunday that keeping Americans safe and taking some of the world's most vulnerable people are not mutually exclusive. The most thoroughly screened category of travelers to the United States and Syrian refugees are subject to even greater scrutiny, she said. Wells said the target of resettling 10,000 Syrian refugees in the U.S. and the 2016 fiscal year will be reached Monday as several hundred Syrians depart from Jordan over 24 hours. Family, which attends Sunday's short ceremony, is headed to San Diego, California. Nadia Jordi, age 49, a former construction worker from the war-ravaged Syrian city of Homs, said he feels fear and joy, fear of the unknown and our new lives, but great joy for our children's lives. Jordi, who suffers from heart problems, will be traveling with his wife, Raj, age 42, and their 4 children. Their oldest son, age 14, his name is Mohammed, said he is eager to sign up for school in San Diego and hopes to study medicine one day. The resettlement program focuses on most vulnerable refugees, including those who were subjected to violence or torture or sick. Millions of Syrians have fled civil war since 2011. Most struggle to survive in tough conditions, including Jordan, which hosts close to 660,000 Syrian refugees. Only a small percentage of Syrian refugees have been resettled to third countries. Instead, donor countries are trying to invest more in job creation and education for refugees and regional to encourage them to stay there instead of moving onward, including to Europe. Wells said the U.S. has taken in more refugees from around the world over the years than all other nations combined. Reached their 10,000th Syrian mark. Huh? Mercy. More for you. And this, I guess, is your enlightenment, because a lot of people, they overlook the obvious. And sometimes they do it on a scale that is unbelievable. So I thought I'd bring this to you today on Friday. It'll give you something to think about over the weekend. It says, this is off the Good News Network. Title of it is Fire Forces Man to Sell Good Luck Pearl. Turns out to be worth $100 million. Talk about good luck. The Philippines fisherman was feeling down on his luck when a house fire forced him to clear out his possessions and change locations until good luck charm that he had kept under his bed changed his life. The man had fished out a giant pearl from the ocean when his anchor got stuck on a rock while sailing off the coast of Palawan Island in the Philippines 10 years ago. When he was forced to sell it, the shock tourism agent at Puerto Rico, Francesca, told him that the 77-pound gem that he had kept hidden in his rundown wooden home was the biggest pearl in the world, valued at $76 million. The Pearl of Allah, which is currently on display in Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in New York City, only weighs in at 14 pounds, 5 times smaller than the gem that the fisherman just handed in. The monstrous prize, measured at 1 foot wide and 2.2 foot long, is going to be verified by the gemologist. I know I pronounced that wrong. Gemologist. I don't know. Institute, other international authorities before hopefully going on display to attract more tourists in the little town. Can you imagine So, you might have a rabbit's foot in your pocket that's worth $100 million. You might have something there that you think is just, look pretty, a whatnot, something that you just enjoy, or something that, has been handed down through the family for years after years that you don't think has anything but sentimental value to you. And when you need it the most, it falls into your lap and proves to be far more valuable than you ever imagined. And it might not be monetary value, it could be emotional value. It could be a lot of different things. It could be of health value. When you need it the most, it's those little things. Well, this wasn't so little, being 77 was, but it was something that he never thought had monetary value. And it could just be that one thing, that you just don't pay much attention to. It could be the one thing that you really need when you most need something. Keep your eyes open. Look around you. Here we are on Friday, first weekend of September. Temperatures are starting to cool down just a little bit. Fall is coming upon us. Leaves are going to be turning colors. We're going to be settling into our homes and getting ready for holidays here soon. I've not been to the store in a while, but I imagine they already have the Halloween stuff out. If they don't, they'll have it out by Monday because this is a holiday weekend, And Lord have mercy, we're going to be into it, the Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas holiday, because they roll it all into one. You don't get to separate holidays anymore. But something that I'd like for everybody to keep in mind, sleep deprivation can really hurt you. A lot of people need to get a little more sleep. It gives your body time to heal. It gives your mind time to reset. So if you can manage to get you a nap once in a while, take advantage of it. I know we fought it for years, as kids growing up, and we wanted us to take a nap. We didn't want to take a nap. We didn't want to take a nap. And Lord have mercy, now you'd give anything to take a nap. So if you get an opportunity, rest yourself, rest your body, balance yourself. Balance can really screw you up if you get off kilter. So that's something for you to keep in mind and think about. Get away from the computer for a little bit. Turn off your phone. If your phone's aggravating you, turn the thing off and take a nap. Nobody is going to fault you if you take a nap once in a while. I mean, if you go to bed and just stay there like Rip Van Winkle, now that might be one thing, but take even a power nap for 20 minutes, or rest for an hour. Get yourself some rest once in a while. Don't drive yourself into the ground. Don't dwell on the negative aspects. Get some positive stuff going in your life. If you have too much negative going on, it's really going to take its toll on your health. So with that, I hope you take some advice from an old lady that's been around a little bit, and she's been on the 11 o'clock news. So with that, we're going to bid you adieu. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I'm going to be back Monday. I don't care if it is a holiday. I'm going to come back and bring you the news, and I hope you all join me. I look forward to seeing you then. Have a wonderful weekend.